I never expected the most important discovery of my life to be hidden beneath a stranger's chair during one of the busiest nights of my career. I was only trying to finish my shift without making mistakes, without drawing attention, and without giving anyone a reason to remember the waitress who spent her evenings moving quietly between tables filled with people far more powerful than she could ever imagine becoming. My name is Emily Carter, and before that night, my world was simple. I worked at one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, a place where wealthy businessmen, politicians, and influential families came to celebrate victories, negotiate private deals, and discuss matters they never wanted ordinary people to hear. I served their meals, refilled their glasses, and learned how to disappear in plain sight while everyone around me believed they were the only important people in the room. For a long time, I thought being overlooked was something I had to accept. People often looked at my uniform before they looked at me, and they judged my position before they ever considered my thoughts, my experiences, or the things I noticed while standing quietly beside them. But being invisible had also given me a strange advantage. When people believed you did not matter, they often forgot to hide the truth around you. I learned to recognize the small changes in someone's voice when a dangerous subject was mentioned, the sudden pauses in conversations when certain names entered the room, and the careful expressions people wore when they were trying to protect something they did not want anyone else to discover. That Friday night began like every other evening at the restaurant. The dining room was filled with expensive suits, elegant dresses, and conversations that remained carefully controlled behind closed doors. I was assigned to a private area where guests valued secrecy as much as they valued luxury, and I spent most of the night focused on doing my job perfectly. Nothing about the evening seemed unusual until after the last guests had left, when I returned to collect forgotten glasses and clean the table before finishing my shift. Near the corner of the room, partially hidden beneath a chair, I noticed something that did not belong there. It was a small black folder resting where anyone could have missed it, and at first, I assumed someone had simply forgotten it after leaving. I picked it up with the intention of handing it to the manager the next morning, because that was what a responsible employee would do. But before I could put it away, something about the folder made me hesitate. It did not look like something a customer had accidentally abandoned. The material was worn, but carefully protected, and there was a feeling attached to it that I could not explain, as if whoever had carried it had spent years making sure it never ended up in the wrong hands. When I looked at the name written on the front, I recognized it immediately. Romano. Adrian Romano was a name almost everyone in New York knew. Some people spoke about him with admiration, others with caution, but everyone understood that he was a man surrounded by influence and power. I had never met him personally, and I only knew the stories people whispered about when they thought no one important was listening. Yet holding that folder in my hands felt different from hearing another rumor about a powerful man. It felt like I had accidentally stepped into a part of his life that was never meant to be discovered by someone like me. I opened the folder just enough to understand what I was holding, and what I saw inside made me realize it was not an ordinary collection of papers. There were old documents, photographs, and records connected to the Romano family, including information about decisions made years earlier and names that appeared familiar in ways I could not immediately understand. I continued looking because I needed to know why something connected to a family I had never met had been hidden inside the restaurant where I worked. Then I saw a name that changed the way I looked at everything. Carter. My own family name was written on one of the documents. For a moment, I could not understand why a record connected to Adrian Romano's family would contain the same name I had carried my entire life. I closed the folder because my first instinct was to walk away and pretend I had never found it. People like Adrian Romano lived in a world where every decision could affect countless lives, while I was someone who spent her nights serving people who barely noticed I existed. Getting involved with something connected to him felt like the kind of choice that could completely change my future, and I had no idea whether the truth inside that folder would bring answers or create problems I was not prepared to face. But curiosity was not the only thing I felt. There was also a strange sense that I had been standing near this mystery long before I ever touched those documents. The next morning, when I returned to work, I expected to quietly give the folder back and leave the entire situation behind me. I thought the mystery would end the moment the folder was returned, but before I could reach the manager's office, I noticed unfamiliar people already inside the restaurant, searching for something they clearly believed was missing. When Adrian Romano finally walked through the entrance, and his eyes moved across the room until they found me, I understood that the folder had not simply been lost. Somehow, it had found its way into my hands for a reason. I thought returning the file would end the mystery. I was wrong. The moment Adrian Romano saw my name connected to those documents, I realized I was no longer just a waitress who found something she should not have found. I was a person connected to a story that had been hidden for years. After Adrian asked where I found the folder, the entire restaurant seemed to become silent. Everyone was watching us. I could feel the questions in the room. Why was someone like him interested in something I discovered? Why did my family name appear inside a Romano document? I wanted answers too. It was left in the private dining room last night, I explained. I was cleaning after the guests left. Adrian looked at the folder carefully. His expression did not reveal much, but I noticed something. He was surprised. Not by the fact that I found it, by the fact that I had seen what was inside. Did you read it? He asked. I hesitated. Honesty had always been important to me, even when the truth was uncomfortable. I saw enough to know my family name was there. For the first time, Adrian looked at me differently. Not like someone who had accidentally discovered something important. Like someone trying to understand a missing piece of a puzzle. He asked if we could talk somewhere private. Normally, I would have refused. I knew nothing about his world. I knew nothing about the people around him. But I also knew something else. Walking away would not erase what I had already seen. The questions would follow me home. So I agreed. We sat in a quiet corner of the restaurant after the morning staff arrived. Adrian placed the folder on the table between us. This file disappeared several years ago, he said. It contains information about my family's history. I looked at him carefully. Then why was it hidden here? That was the question he did not answer immediately. Instead, he opened the folder and reviewed the pages again. I noticed something about him that surprised me. People talked about Adrian Romano as if he was only power and control. But sitting across from him, I saw something else. He looked tired. Not physically tired. Emotionally tired. Like someone who had spent years searching for answers nobody wanted to give him. What exactly is your connection to my family? He asked. I almost laughed because I had been asking myself the same question. I do not know. And that was the truth. My family was ordinary. My father repaired old furniture before he passed away. My mother spent her life working hard to provide for us. We never talked about powerful families or hidden agreements. We were not part of that world. At least, that was what I believed. Adrian studied the documents again. Your family name appears here several times, he said. But there are missing pages. I looked at the folder. Someone removed them? He nodded. That is what I believe. The thought made me uncomfortable. Someone had taken information from this file before I found it. Someone wanted certain details to disappear. Before we could continue, Adrian received a message. His expression changed slightly. Not fear. Concern. Something had happened. More people were asking questions about the missing file. People who wanted to know where it was. He looked at me. You need to understand something, Emma. This file is not important because of what is written inside. It is important because someone worked very hard to make sure nobody ever read it. I looked at the folder again. A strange feeling came over me. I had spent my entire life believing I was invisible to powerful people. But now, the most influential man I had ever met was sitting across from me because of something connected to my family. Later that afternoon, Adrian asked me to stay nearby while he investigated the situation. I knew it was unusual. I knew I had stepped into a world I did not understand. But I also knew I could not ignore the truth anymore. Before leaving, Adrian stopped near the doorway. Emma, he said, why did you open the file? I thought about the question. The answer was simple. Because I wanted to know why my name was inside. He nodded slowly. Then he said something I did not expect. That may be the only reason I can trust you. I watched him walk away, wondering what kind of secret could connect a waitress like me to a family like his. I still did not know the answer. But I knew one thing. Finding that file had changed my life. And the truth inside it was only beginning to reveal itself. I used to believe secrets belonged to powerful people. The kind of people whose names appeared in newspapers and whose decisions affected entire cities. I never imagined that one forgotten file could reveal that ordinary people could be connected to those secrets too. After my conversation with Adrian Romano, I returned home with more questions than answers. The city outside my apartment looked the same, but everything felt different. The simple life I had always understood suddenly seemed like a small piece of a much larger story. I placed the copy of the documents I had written notes about on my kitchen table and looked at the names again. Carter, Romano. Two families that seemed completely separate, yet somehow connected by something hidden for years. I tried to remember anything my parents had ever said about the Romano name. Nothing came to mind. My father was a quiet man who avoided talking about the past. Whenever I asked about old family stories, he always changed the subject. At the time, I thought he simply did not like remembering difficult moments. Now I wondered if he was protecting something. The next morning, Adrian contacted me and asked if we could meet again. This time, he wanted to show me something from the file that he had not mentioned before. When I arrived at a private office away from the restaurant, I expected to see the same cold and controlled man everyone described. Instead, I saw someone carefully studying old photographs spread across the desk. Adrian looked up when I entered. "I found something you need to see," he said. He handed me a photograph. It was old, slightly faded, and showed several people standing outside a building I did not recognize. My attention immediately went to one person in the picture. My father. I stopped breathing for a moment. "Where did you get this?" I asked. Adrian looked at the photograph. It was inside the hidden section of the file. I stared at the image, trying to understand how my father could have been connected to a family like the Romanos. My father was not someone who chased money or influence. He believed a person's character mattered more than their position. That was one of the lessons he repeated throughout my childhood. "Your father helped my family during a difficult time," Adrian explained. "But whatever happened between our families was never recorded officially." I looked at him. "Then why hide it?" Adrian was quiet for a moment. "Because someone believed the truth would change everything." His answer stayed with me. The more I learned, the more I realized this was not just about a missing file. It was about people making choices years ago and leaving others to deal with the consequences. I asked Adrian why he trusted me enough to share this information. He gave a simple answer. "Because everyone else who knows about this has a reason to protect themselves. You only want the truth." That statement surprised me. I had spent most of my life thinking being unnoticed was a weakness. But now I wondered if it had given me something valuable. People were honest around me because they did not think I mattered. They spoke freely because they never expected me to understand. That was how I found the file. That was how I discovered the truth. Later that day, Adrian invited me to review the remaining documents with him. He wanted someone outside his world to help him see what he might be missing. I knew I was taking a risk by staying involved. I knew there were powerful people connected to this secret. But I also knew I could not walk away from my own family's history. As we went through the papers, one detail caught my attention. A handwritten note was attached to the final page. It was short, but the message was clear. "Protect the person who knows the truth, not the person who controls it." I read the sentence twice. Adrian noticed my reaction. "What does it mean?" he asked. I looked at the words again. For some reason, I felt they were written for someone like me. Someone who never expected to be part of this world. Someone who was never searching for power. I looked at Adrian and realized something had changed between us. He was no longer just a powerful man looking for answers. He was someone searching for the same thing I was. The truth. And somewhere inside that hidden file was the reason our families had been connected all along. I thought finding the hidden file was the moment everything changed. I was wrong. The real change happened when I realized the people around me had spent years protecting a secret that affected my family too. The truth was no longer something I could simply discover and walk away from. It had become a part of my life. After reading the handwritten message inside the file, Adrian Romano and I spent the next few hours trying to understand what it meant. Protect the person who knows the truth, not the person who controls it. The sentence felt simple, but every word carried a deeper meaning. Someone had created that message for a reason. Someone knew that power could hide the truth, but honesty could reveal it. Adrian continued reviewing the documents while I studied the old photograph of my father. I noticed something I had missed before. In the corner of the picture, there was a date written by hand. It was from more than 20 years ago, long before I ever knew the Romano name existed. "That date means something," I said. Adrian looked at me. "Why?" I pointed to the number. My father kept a calendar with important dates written on every page. He believed memories were worth protecting. If he wrote this date, there was a reason. For the first time, Adrian seemed to consider that my perspective could reveal something his own investigation had missed. He had spent years searching through official records, family documents, and business information. But he never had the personal memories of someone who knew the people involved. That was the difference between us. He searched for evidence. I searched for meaning. Later that evening, Adrian brought me to a private room where additional family records were stored. The room was quiet, filled with old books, photographs, and documents collected over generations. I expected to feel out of place. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Familiarity. There were details that reminded me of my childhood. A style of handwriting. Certain phrases written in old letters. Small things that connected my memories with this unfamiliar world. Adrian noticed my reaction. You recognize something. I nodded slowly. Not exactly, but it feels familiar. As we continued searching, we discovered another document hidden between older records. It was not part of the original file. It was a personal letter. The letter was written by someone from the Romano family to my father. It thanked him for keeping a promise that protected both families. I read the words carefully. There was no mention of wealth, influence, or power. It was about trust. A promise between people who believed doing the right thing mattered more than protecting their reputation. Adrian remained silent after reading it. I could tell the letter affected him. My family spent years looking for who betrayed us, he said quietly. Maybe we were looking in the wrong direction. His words surprised me. A person like Adrian Romano was not someone who easily admitted uncertainty. But in that moment, I saw a different side of him. He was not just a powerful man trying to protect an empire. He was a son trying to understand the choices made before him. Before we could continue, Adrian received another message. Someone had discovered that the hidden file had been found. The situation had changed. More people knew that the secret was no longer buried. Adrian looked at me with a serious expression. Emma, from this moment on, you need to understand something. The people connected to this file will want answers. I looked at the documents on the table. Then they should hear the truth. Adrian studied me for a moment. You are not afraid? I thought about everything that had happened. A few days earlier, I was only a waitress finishing another long shift. Now I was standing beside a man whose family history was connected to mine. I was confused. I was uncertain, but I was not afraid of knowing the truth. I am afraid, I admitted. But being afraid does not mean we should ignore what is right. For a moment, Adrian said nothing. Then he gave a small nod. It was the first time I saw respect in his expression, not just curiosity. As we prepared to uncover the rest of the hidden story, I realized something important. The file had brought me into Adrian Romano's world, but the truth inside it was bringing him into mine. And neither of us knew how much that truth was about to change everything. I thought the hardest part would be discovering the truth about my father. I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing that the truth could change the way people saw each other forever. Some secrets were hidden because they were dangerous. Others were hidden because people were afraid of what would happen when the world finally knew. After Adrian and I found the letter connecting our families, we spent the next day carefully reviewing every document inside the hidden file. Every page revealed another piece of a story that had been forgotten. My father's name appeared more often than I expected. He was not connected to the Romano family because of business or influence. He was connected because he made a choice years ago that changed the lives of both families. Your father protected something that belonged to my family, Adrian said as he studied the records. But he never used that information for himself. I looked at the documents again. That sounded exactly like my father. He was the kind of person who would help someone without expecting recognition. He believed that doing the right thing mattered, even when nobody knew about it. Growing up, I never understood why he always told me to pay attention to people's actions instead of their words. Now I finally understood. He knew that appearances could be misleading. Adrian and I continued searching through the records, looking for the missing pages mentioned earlier. Without them, we still did not know the complete story. Then I noticed something written on the back of an old photograph. A small note in my father's handwriting. The truth belongs to those who are willing to carry it. I recognized those words immediately. My father had said something similar to me when I was young. At the time, I thought it was just another life lesson. Now I realized it was connected to something much bigger. Adrian noticed my expression. You know that handwriting. I nodded. It is my father's. He looked at the photograph carefully. Then your father knew this secret would eventually be discovered. The thought stayed with me. Maybe my father did not hide the truth because he wanted it forgotten. Maybe he was waiting for the right person to find it. But why me? Why now? Before I could answer that question, Adrian received information that changed our direction. Someone else had been searching for the missing parts of the file. The documents were not the only thing people wanted to find. They wanted to know who had access to them. Adrian looked at me. This is why I asked you to stay close. You are connected to this, whether you wanted to be or not. I understood what he meant. My life had changed without my permission. A few days earlier, my biggest concern was making enough money to cover my bills and finishing my shifts without problems. Now I was sitting in a private room with Adrian Romano, trying to uncover a secret that connected our families. But something about the situation had changed. At first, I thought Adrian only saw me as someone who had information he needed. Now I saw that he was beginning to trust my judgment. He asked for my opinion. He listened when I noticed small details. For someone like Adrian, that meant something. Later that evening, we returned to the restaurant where everything had started. The private dining room looked completely different now. The same place where I found the file had become the place where we searched for answers. Adrian stood near the table and looked around quietly. You know what is strange, he said. What? I asked. I spent years searching through powerful people's records, believing the answer was hidden there. But the person who found the truth was someone everyone ignored. I smiled slightly. Maybe people ignore things they do not think are important. Adrian looked at me. Maybe they should start paying attention. For the first time since this began, the tension between us felt different. It was no longer just about a mystery. It was about two people learning to understand each other. But before we could continue, another document arrived. This one was different from the others. It contained a name neither of us expected to see. A person connected to both families. A person who had been trusted by everyone. I looked at Adrian's face as he read the page. His expression changed immediately. What is it? I asked. He slowly placed the document on the table. The person who hid this secret was not outside our families. He looked at me. It was someone we both knew. In that moment, I realized the hidden file had revealed more than a forgotten story. It had revealed a betrayal that had been waiting years to come into the light. I thought discovering the person behind the hidden secret would finally give us peace. Instead, it opened a deeper question. How could someone close to both families carry a truth that affected so many lives and remain silent for so long? After Adrian showed me the document with the unexpected name, neither of us spoke for several moments. The room felt different. The same restaurant where I had once walked through with a simple purpose now felt like the center of a story that had been waiting decades to continue. Adrian carefully placed the document back inside the folder. His expression was calm, but I could see the disappointment behind his eyes. There are people who knew about this, he said quietly. People who allowed us to believe something that was not true. I looked at the page again. The name belonged to someone both families trusted. Someone who had been present during important moments in the past. Someone who had always appeared loyal. Maybe there is another explanation, I said. Adrian looked at me. You still believe that? I understood why he asked. In his world, trust was not something given easily. But my father had taught me something important. A person should be judged by the complete story, not just one piece of information. I believe people can make mistakes, I replied. But I also believe the truth matters. Adrian studied me for a moment. I noticed that he no longer looked at me like an outsider. He looked at me like someone whose opinion carried weight. That was something I never expected from a man like him. We spent the next several hours organizing the information from the file. The more we connected the details, the clearer the picture became. Years ago, both families had been involved in a difficult situation. My father had helped protect information that could have damaged relationships and destroyed trust between people who depended on each other. But someone else had taken that protection and turned it into a secret for their own benefit. The discovery changed the way I saw everything. My father had not been hiding from the past. He had been protecting people from it. Why did he never tell you? Adrian asked. The question was difficult because I had asked myself the same thing. I thought about my childhood, the quiet moments, the advice he gave me, the way he always encouraged me to stay kind, even when others were not. Maybe he wanted me to have a normal life, I said. Adrian looked down at the documents. Maybe he knew this world could take that away from you. His words stayed with me, because he was right. Since finding the file, my life had become something I barely recognized. But strangely, I did not feel like I had lost myself. I felt like I was finally understanding a part of myself that had always been missing. Later that evening, Adrian asked me to join him in reviewing the final section of the file. It contained personal notes from years ago. One note stood out immediately. It mentioned a promise between my father and Adrian's family. A promise to protect the truth until the right person was ready to discover it. I read the sentence again. The right person. I looked at Adrian. Do you think my father knew it would be me? He was silent for a moment. I think he knew someone honest would eventually find it. That answer meant more than I expected. I had spent years believing my ordinary life made me insignificant. Now I realized that being ordinary had allowed me to see things others ignored. I was not searching for influence. I was not trying to gain anything from the secret. I only wanted answers. Before we could finish reviewing the documents, Adrian received another message. The person connected to the hidden file wanted to meet. Adrian read the message carefully, then looked at me. This changes things. I felt a sense of uncertainty. Who is it? He paused before answering. Someone who has been part of my family's inner circle for years. I understood immediately. The truth was getting closer, but so was the moment when trust would be tested. Adrian closed the folder and looked toward the window. The city lights reflected across the glass. Emma, there is something you should know. The hardest part of finding the truth is not discovering the secret. He turned back toward me. It is accepting what the truth changes. I looked at the file between us. A few days earlier, it was just a forgotten folder in a restaurant. Now it was the connection between two families, two pasts, and two people who never expected their lives to become connected. And as we prepared to meet the person who held the remaining answers, I realized something important. The hidden file did not just reveal a secret from the past. It was revealing who we really were in the present. I thought meeting the person behind the hidden file would finally answer all our questions. Instead, it showed me that some truths are more complicated than secrets. Sometimes the hardest thing to understand is not what happened in the past. It is why people chose the decisions they made. Adrian and I arrived at a quiet private office where the meeting was supposed to happen. I expected someone cold and defensive. I expected excuses. But when the door opened, I saw someone I never imagined would be connected to this story. Richard Hale. He had been a trusted advisor to the Romano family for more than 20 years. He was the person Adrian's family relied on during important decisions. He was also someone my father had known personally. Richard looked at the folder on the table and immediately understood why we were there. For a moment, nobody spoke. The silence carried the weight of years of unanswered questions. I knew this day would come, Richard finally said. Adrian looked at him carefully. Then you knew about the file. Richard nodded slowly. I knew it existed. I knew your father and Emma's father wanted the truth protected until the right time. I watched Adrian's expression change. He was not angry. He looked disappointed, like someone who had spent years searching for an answer and suddenly realized the answer had been closer than he imagined. Why did you keep it hidden from me? Adrian asked. Richard looked down at the documents. Because you were not ready to see the entire picture. I expected Adrian to reject that answer. Instead, he remained quiet. That surprised me. The man I first met at the restaurant seemed like someone who always needed control. But now I saw something different. He was listening. Richard explained that years ago, a disagreement inside the Romano family created a difficult situation. Some people wanted to protect the family's reputation at any cost. Others believed honesty was more important. My father and Adrian's father were among those who believed the truth should eventually be revealed. They created the hidden file as a record of what really happened. Your fathers trusted each other, Richard explained. They knew future generations might need the truth, but they also knew the truth had to be handled carefully. I looked at Adrian. I could see how much this information affected him. His entire understanding of his family's history was changing. For years, he believed certain people had failed him. Now he was discovering that some people had been protecting something bigger than himself. Then why did the pages disappear? Adrian asked. Richard took a deep breath. Because not everyone wanted the truth to come out. The answer was simple, but it explained so much. The missing pages were not lost. They were removed by someone who believed hiding the past was easier than facing it. I looked at the file and thought about my father. He had spent years carrying a secret without telling me. At first, that hurt. But now I understood something. He was not trying to keep me away from the truth. He was trying to protect my chance to choose my own path. After the meeting ended, Adrian and I walked outside into the evening air. The city was busy around us, but everything felt strangely quiet. You were right, Adrian said. I looked at him. About what? About people being more than one decision. I remembered our earlier conversation. I had told him that people could make mistakes and still have good intentions. Now he was beginning to understand. Your father was not just someone who kept the secret, Adrian continued. He was someone who protected people. I smiled slightly. That sounds like him. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then Adrian looked at me. You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just the person who found the file. I waited for him to continue. Now I realize you were the person the file was waiting for. His words stayed with me. Not because they made me feel important, but because they made me understand something. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the person who sees what everyone else misses. Later that night, Adrian received the final information about the missing pages. They had been found. The last pieces of the story were finally available. But before opening them, Adrian looked at me and said, "Whatever we find inside, we need to be prepared." I looked at the folder between us. The truth was close. But I had learned something during this journey. The truth was not just about what happened. It was about what people chose to do after they discovered it. And soon, Adrian Romano and I would finally learn the full story that connected our families. I thought the final pages of the hidden file would reveal a simple answer. I was wrong. They revealed something much more important. They showed us that the truth was never just about one family or one secret. It was about the choices people made when they had the opportunity to do what was right. After Richard Hale left, Adrian and I returned to the private office with the recovered pages. For the first time since this journey began, everything we needed was finally in front of us. The missing pieces of the story were no longer missing. Adrian carefully opened the folder and placed the pages on the table. I watched his expression as he read each line. The man who always seemed certain suddenly looked like someone discovering a part of himself he had never known existed. "This changes everything," he said quietly. I looked at the documents. The pages explained what had happened years ago between our families. There had been no betrayal between my father and Adrian's family. There had been a promise to protect something important until the right people were ready to understand it. My father and Adrian's father had discovered that someone inside the family had been making decisions based on personal interest rather than loyalty. Instead of creating more conflict, they chose patience. They created a record of the truth and waited for a time when it could be revealed without causing unnecessary damage. I looked at Adrian. "Your father knew this would happen eventually." Adrian nodded. He believed the truth would find its way back. Those words stayed with me. The truth had taken years to return, but it had finally reached the people who needed to see it. As we continued reading, we found another important detail. The person who had hidden the pages was not trying to destroy either family. They were afraid. Afraid that revealing the past would change relationships, damage trust, and force people to face decisions they wanted to forget. It was not an excuse, but it explained why the secret lasted so long. Adrian sat quietly for several moments. I could tell he was thinking about everything he had believed before. "I spent years thinking my family was betrayed," he said. "But maybe the real mistake was believing I already knew the whole story." I understood that feeling. I had spent my entire life believing my family had no connection to people like the Romanos. Now I knew my father had been part of something much larger than I ever imagined. But the most surprising part was not the secret itself. It was seeing Adrian change because of it. The first time I met him, he was a man surrounded by people who respected his power. But very few people challenged his assumptions. Now he was willing to question everything he thought he knew. "What are you going to do with this information?" I asked. Adrian looked at the documents. "The old version of me would have used this to protect my family's image." He paused. "But that is exactly how the secret survived for so long." His answer surprised me. "Then what will you do now?" He looked at me. "I will tell the truth." Those simple words showed how much he had changed. He was no longer focused only on protecting a name. He was thinking about protecting the people connected to that name. Later that evening, Adrian invited the family members connected to the documents to meet. He wanted everyone to hear the complete story instead of pieces of it. I stood beside him, unsure of what would happen next. For the first time, I was not there because I had found the file. I was there because Adrian trusted me. Before everyone arrived, he looked at me and said, "You realize you changed everything, right?" I shook my head. "I only found a folder." Adrian smiled slightly. "No, you found the truth when everyone else was looking away." Those words meant more than he knew. I had spent years thinking my ordinary life made me less important. But now I understood that ordinary people could still make extraordinary differences. When the meeting began, Everyone gathered around the table where the hidden file had started this entire journey. The final truth was ready to be shared. And for the first time in many years, no one would have to hide from it anymore. I thought sharing the truth would be the hardest moment of our journey. I was wrong. The hardest moment was seeing how people reacted when they finally understood what had been hidden for so many years. Some people expected anger. Some expected blame. But what happened instead was something none of us imagined. It was the beginning of forgiveness. The meeting inside the Moretti family estate was quiet when everyone gathered around the table. The same table where the hidden file had been opened, questioned, and studied was now the place where the complete story would finally be told. Adrian stood beside me, not in front of me. That small detail meant more than anyone else realized. When I first met him, he was someone who carried every responsibility alone. He believed protecting his family meant controlling every situation. But now he understood something different. Protecting people did not mean hiding the truth from them. It meant giving them the chance to face it. Adrian placed the documents on the table and began explaining what we had discovered. He did not leave out the difficult parts. He did not change the story to make his family look better. He simply told the truth. The room remained silent as everyone listened. Some people looked surprised. Others looked regretful. But nobody could deny what the documents revealed. The past was not as simple as they once believed. There were mistakes. There were fears. There were moments when people chose silence because they thought it would prevent problems. But silence had created a different kind of problem. It had allowed misunderstandings to last for years. When Adrian finished speaking, he looked toward me. I understood what he was asking without words. He wanted me to share my part of the story. I told them about my father. I told them about the lessons he taught me. I told them that he never cared about status or influence. He believed a person's value came from their choices, especially when nobody was watching. As I spoke, I realized something. My father had left me more than memories. He had left me a way of seeing the world. He had taught me to look beyond appearances. That lesson was the reason I noticed the file. It was the reason I kept searching for answers instead of walking away. After the meeting ended, the atmosphere inside the estate felt different. The secret that had once created distance between families was no longer controlling their decisions. People began having honest conversations. They began asking questions they had avoided for years. And for the first time, the Romano family was not focused on protecting an image. They were focused on rebuilding trust. Later that evening, Adrian and I walked through the quiet garden behind the estate. The city lights reflected in the distance, and everything felt strangely peaceful. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you never found that file? Adrian asked. I smiled softly. Probably nothing would have changed. He looked at me. I do not think that is true. I waited for him to continue. I think some truths find the person who is willing to carry them. His words reminded me of the message inside the file. The truth belongs to those who are willing to carry it. Months earlier, I was just a waitress trying to create a stable life. I never searched for power. I never wanted attention. I only wanted answers. Yet somehow, that simple desire led me into a world I never expected to enter. Adrian had changed too. He was still respected. He was still the person everyone looked to when difficult decisions needed to be made. But something about him was different. He listened more. He trusted more. He understood that leadership was not only about making decisions. It was about understanding the people affected by those decisions. You know, Adrian said, when this started, I thought you were the person who found a secret that belonged to my family. I looked at him. And now? He smiled slightly. Now I think you reminded my family what honesty was worth. I did not become someone powerful because of the hidden file. I did not change my life by entering Adrian Romano's world. Instead, I discovered something more important. A person's value is not decided by their position, their appearance, or the way others see them. It is decided by the courage they show when the truth finally arrives. The hidden file connected two families, but the lesson it revealed was much bigger than that. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the person who brings the answers everyone needs. And sometimes, the most unexpected discovery is not the secret we uncover. It is the person we become after learning the truth.